Welcome to Muslims and Mental Health with Sister Heather, a groundbreaking program looking at mental health issues through the biopsychosocial spiritual paradigm.
Welcome back to Muslims and Mental Health. This is our first episode of the new year. Happy New Year to you and your loved ones. We are so happy to be back. And during the break, I actually had the opportunity to attend a great conference in Toronto, Canada, that I would just like to give a shout out to, because I think any of you who have not been able to attend it might want to attend it in the future. Next year, they'll be celebrating their 15th anniversary of this conference. It's called Reviving the Islamic Spirit, and it is just a fantastic conference. So I just wanted to mention that briefly before we get started. This episode, we're going to talk about setting our goals for the new year. And we're going to do so in such a way that is a little bit different than what you're used to. And I want to start out by just talking a little bit about why we created Muslims and Mental Health, and getting back to the original purpose of serving the community, of serving those who are underrepresented, those who are underserved, and looking at goals through the lens of those people, of that group of people. And so when we do that, we want to first kind of think about the idea of finding balance. Oftentimes we're encouraged, as we're looking at goal setting, to think about balance and finding balance. But what is often not told is the whole story, which is having balance is great, but it's also okay to be out of balance. You don't have to be in balance all the time. Being out of balance allows for growth. It allows for new knowledge to be learned. And so it's okay to actually be imbalanced at times and not to have balance all the time. The idea is that you would strive to have some balance, but if you're imbalanced, it doesn't mean that you're a loser or that you're a failure. It's okay to have imbalance. And one of the ways that we know this, right, is through the research that has been done around perception. And our social psychologists have looked at the idea of perception, and what they have found is that any one person's idea of what they perceive is only as accurate and sharp and clear as if you take your thumb and you hold it out in front of you like this, and this little surface space here on our thumbs, that is the total amount of accurate perception any one given person has. So what we actually perceive, though, is all of the things that are around us that shape that perception. The environment, our social group, all of the things that, the colors in the room, the objects, those things also influence our perception. And based on our life experience and our knowledge and the interactions that we've had, that will also shape our perception. So as you can imagine, every person has a different perception based on not what's here on this little area, but all the things that are around influencing what is right there. And so I mention this because I think that as we take this journey at looking at setting our goals for the new year, we should consider all of those things that are influencing our perceptions, because that will color, if you will, how we will maintain those goals. And one of the reasons I mention this is because research has also shown us that setting New Year's resolutions, setting New Year's goals, usually fail by February 14th. Usually by February 14th, people have lost their resolutions already. And so I want you to think a little bit more out of the box and not think of them so much as in hard, core, written down, I must follow these steps to get to this goal, but rather appreciate the process of stating, I want to do X, Y, and Z, and then the process to get there. How do we get there? Through perception, based on our experiences and all of the things that go with that, so that you can measure your success in a way that makes sense and in a way that is fair to yourself, so that you don't undermine yourself and that you're able to move forward. And let's say you get 90% of your goal accomplished, that's still success. That's still an accomplishment. And so rather than being hard lined and in a box or written down on a line somewhere, you appreciate the process, the whole process that you're going through. Part of that is going to be recognizing the perceptions you have of that process as you're going through it. Another thing that I would like to talk about in terms of setting goals is human connection. And the reason I bring up human connection is because we have also learned from health psychologists that the level of stress you have and how you feel stress, how you perceive stress, what you believe about stress will affect your life expectancy. So people who have high stress but who believe that that stress is good for them, they literally show in their the vessels of their heart that the blood flows better than people who believe that stress is bad for you and that it has negative effects. And those people, they show a smaller opening within the heart. And so what happens is it cuts their life shorter. So the way we frame things in our minds about stress will actually affect our life expectancy. But also what comes with that stress is oxytocin. The brain produces oxytocin. Now, oxytocin will be familiar with a lot of you around the idea of pregnancy and giving birth, because we know that oxytocin is released when women give birth to children, and that's what helps in the connection of the baby to the mother. Well, when we have stress, all of us, male and female, we release oxytocin into our system. And the reason that oxytocin, we believe, is released is to motivate people into human connection. And why is human connection important? Well, because there are great benefits to oxytocin, but that having that human connection and then developing a sense of care for others is the biological equivalent to what they also see the body producing when we see somebody demonstrating courage. So when you can rearrange the furniture in your mind to see stress as being a good thing for you that helps you achieve the goals that you want to set for yourself and achieve, and that motivates you into human connection with others and that you care for others, that gives you the biological equivalent of courage. And courage, as we know, is very important when you want to achieve something. Also, I want to encourage us all to be the authors of our own success. And what do I mean by this? Well, when we look at underserved and underrepresented populations, we're typically talking about minority populations. And as we know in our country, the media has framed many things about minorities in terms of defining and classifying them in a way that doesn't necessarily represent the authenticity of that group. And so when we think about setting our goals, we want to make sure that we're doing so in a way that we define what that success looks like and don't allow someone out there to define it for us. And one of the ways that we see in general, whether you're a minority or part of the dominant culture, that society has been moving in that direction of defining things for you, is that we have seen an increase over the years of this belief in secular society of meritocracy, that we all live in this meritocracy, which suggests that if you just take the right steps, that you can get there. It doesn't account for haphazardness. And so what we see as a result of that as well is that if people can take the right steps and make it to the top, people can also take the wrong steps and end at the bottom. So those people who are impoverished, those people who are at the bottom, people who are in prison, for example, all of those people deserve to be there in a meritocracy type system. And I think that when you are hearing me actually say this, I'm sure it's resonating with you that just doesn't sound right. But that's kind of the system that we have set up. And it doesn't account for this haphazardness that is part of the reality that exists in society. So some people get places accidentally. They happen to be at the right place at the right time. Or some fluke happens and they end up where they are. It's not always that you can take step A to step B to step C and have success. And if we tie ourselves to this idea that God is not in the driver's seat, that there's not something transcending in our lives, we will be setting ourselves up psychologically for failure. We will be considering that, well, if I do A, B, and C and I don't get there, then I'm somehow a loser. I'm a failure. And these kind of labels that have been given out societally do us as a community and in our communal psychology a very big disservice. As well, they will do us a disservice as we're setting our goals. So you want to, again, break out of that box of thinking that everything is a meritocracy, and if I just take steps A, B, and C, that I will have success. That might not actually happen. So if that doesn't happen, then what? How do you frame it for yourself to be the driver's seat of your own success? And if you don't have success, what does that mean? For the Muslim, and this show is called Muslims and Mental Health, what that might suggest for you is that God has another plan for you, and that maybe God's part in this is making things turn out differently. And so, it's something to consider instead of being so tied emotionally to success going A, B, and C. Which brings up another point which I wanted to emphasize, which is how society has actually changed our emotional attachments toward material things. So when people get that Ferrari or that Bentley or the mansion, oftentimes part of the reason they enjoy that is because there's an emotional reward in that. And we have set up the dynamics in our society in most recent times to have that emotional reward fulfilled through material things, as opposed to that human connection that I mentioned earlier. And so you really want to put some time and effort when you're making your goals as to what those goals might be, in considering both human connection and how much of my emotionality, how much of my emotional reward is going into material things versus human connection. Because we know, again, biologically, you will get more reward out of that human connection than you will putting that investment into a material good. So at this time, I would like to take a short break for our sponsor, and I'll be right back.
Hi, welcome to Adelante. This is Adelante Recovery, and my name is Yvette Kuglin, and I'm part of the staff.
Adelante Recovery Center has helped people in dual diagnosis for 5 years. We accept most PPO insurances and provide luxury accommodations and 24-hour support. To speak with an admissions counselor, call 1-888-242-4450.
A lot of time we don't even know what's wrong with us, and sometimes we need to get away to figure that out. So if you want to go for a little retreat out in Corona Del Mar, which is a confidential location, we're here to help. So we're only a phone call away. Thank you.
Welcome back to Muslims and Mental Health. Today we are talking about setting goals for 2016. And I'd like to continue on by putting an idea into your head called keeping your eyes on the prize. When I was a younger person, they used to have a documentary series called The Eyes on the Prize. And it was so fitting because it had to do with the civil rights movement. And when we think about setting goals for ourselves, we want to keep this idea of keeping your eyes on the prize in our mind, because as we were talking at the beginning of this episode about perception, if we can stay focused, keep our focus on the goals that we're setting and not the things that are distracting us around us, then we are more likely to achieve that goal. In fact, they've done research on this and have found significant, results, upwards of like 30% difference in terms of success of reaching the goal that you set for yourself. I know particularly health psychologists have looked at this when it comes to weight goals, to habit-changing goals. If you can stay focused on that one thing that you are trying to achieve and not get distracted by the things around in your periphery, then you're more likely to achieve it. So one of the ways you can do this is through the vision science literature that we have. And vision science literature talks about, for example, vision boards. Some of you may have already heard of vision boards. They've been popular for some time. In fact, a good friend of mine reminded me that in the 80s, she remembers doing vision boards. And I myself do a vision board every year and know many people who do. But what you can do is take a nice board like this or a poster board, maybe even, different colors. I've seen them done in blue, red, black, different colors. And you're going to take items that you find either in a magazine or on the internet. You can print them out, pictures and words, things that represent to you the goals that you want to achieve during the year. You're going to cut them out, you're going to paste them on, and then you're going to put it in a place where you can reference it every day. So you're going to see it every day. So that helps you stay focused on the goal that you're trying to achieve. Oftentimes, I've seen also done where, like when you have a board like this, you can actually do like maybe 6 months and then come back to it at the mid-year and put another 6 months. And so the idea is that whatever you put on that board, and you want to be very careful about what you do put on that board, you will see manifesting in your life. Because if you're seeing it and you're thinking about it and you're acting upon it, that's probably what's going to manifest in your life. And so you want to be really choosy and carefully put what your goals are on that board in terms of pictures and words. And I have actually seen people enumerate them as well. So you can be very creative with it, be very colorful with it. It's totally up to you. Again, striving for defining what success looks like to you. And then lastly, I want to talk to you in terms of setting goals about the art of doing. Theologically, in most faiths, not just Islam, but in most theological philosophies, it is at the base of it, we know that increased obedience leads to increased faith, and decreased obedience leads to decreased faith. So in other words, another way of saying that is when we put our actions, out there, we are likely to increase in faith. And when we look at what we've talked about up to this point in this episode about transcendence, one of the reasons that we are pulled into nature or back to nature, like in 2015, we talked about mindfulness and connecting to nature. And later on this year, we are going to have an episode about connecting with nature. But one of the reasons our modern society seeks to connect with nature so much is really about what we talked about before, and this tie to the material world, right? So when you're tied completely to the material world, you forget about transcending. And so nature represents that ability to transcend the self. Interestingly, though, in our everyday world, with our consciousness, we have the ability to recognize that not everything is material. When we go to sleep at night and we dream, our conscience, is dreaming, and that's debatable. I mean, there are many theories about what dreams are, but is it of this world or is it not of this world? Is it otherworldly? So we have within ourselves, we are a human spirit in a human being, having a human experience. And so there is this transcendence that we have. And when we recognize that, and we recognize the importance of doing along with the beliefs. So when we combine the mind and body experience and put that toward our goals in concert with each other, that's when we achieve. And so when they talk about obedience, with the increase of obedience, the increase of faith, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about putting forward action that will also help with the beliefs that we're rearranging in our minds, the furniture we're rearranging in our minds to be successful, to reach our goals, whatever they may be, whether they be spiritual, whether they be physical, whether they be academic, or with our spouses, our families. Action and belief together are what our recipe for success. And so I really want to emphasize the art of doing. In the end, the most important thing that I would like you to leave with as you leave this episode today is why it's so important for you to be the author of your own success. And I wish for all of you that you take this year and to make sure that you're striving for your own success in the way that you're defining it, and not let all those voices that are trying to influence you from the media, from outside sources that are not in your own mind, don't allow them in to change the course of the way that you want to do it. Just do it the way that you see success, and be successful in your own terms. Be the author of your own success. So at this point, actually, I would like to conclude this episode of Muslims and Mental Health. And I want to remind you about our adjunctive website, which is www.nafshealertherapy.wordpress.com. We have been working on this website to bring it up to date and to add a few more resources to it. So I'd encourage you to go check it out again. And also, we're very open to your comments, your feedback, your concern at www.nafshealertherapy@gmail.com. And I would also like to thank Imam Suhaib Webb for the great shout out that he gave us in Toronto over the break. We really appreciate all your support. So thank you, and have a blessed year.